All right. Good evening. Okay, so today we're gonna try to implement the system that we've been working on. So this week and actually we started the modeling the week before. So we had the activity model to describe the general steps of finding the trend setters, and then we created a class diagram, and then we created a sequence diagram. Okay, now let's see how are we going to implement based on the design that we created. Okay, so here I'm gonna start a new folder. Okay, so I'm gonna put it here. I'm just gonna call it Setters Live. And let's see how are we going to implement the design that we thought about. All right, so basically we need an entry point to the script, right? So oftentimes people call it main.py, the file that contains the access point, the starting point of the application. Okay, so that would be our entry point here. Okay, and we had a number of classes. Now you need to decide how are you going to put these classes, organize these classes. I personally, coming from Java background, I prefer to put every class in one file. However, it's not uncommon for Python that you have one file that could have multiple classes and multiple functions in it. Okay, so it's a matter of a decision. I feel like it would be more organized if we have one class per file. Okay, but I mean, it's not wrong to put them all together if you want to. Okay, so it's just a personal preference. I'm gonna create one file per class, but you know the class name is not it's different from Java and similar languages. The file name doesn't have to be the same name of the class. Okay, and usually file name has small letters. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 classes. So let me start with the most basic one, the least dependent one, which is the trendsetter class. Okay, so I'm just gonna create a file called trendsetter.py. And this is the least dependent one, so it doesn't need to import anything. It just have a class that is a trendsetter class. And it has two attributes or two properties. Now, we remember how it is in Python that if we define the property at the class level like here, like this, then we need to give it an initial value. And it doesn't really make sense to have name and score having initial values. So we just initialize them in the constructor. Okay, so here the constructor will take name and popularity score. And just set self.name equal name. And self.popularity score equal popularity score. Okay. Now, also, eventually we're gonna need to print it, right? So we didn't think about that when we put it in the design, but eventually we're gonna need to print this information, right? So we can add a definition for the str function. I think we talked about it before. So this str function is pretty much similar to the toString function in Java. It's just when you send the object as it is to be printed, the print function will call this str in order to have a string representation of that object. Okay, so it just needs to return a string. So I'm gonna return self.name and end it with dash and the popularity score after we turn it into a string. Okay. So that's one of the classes here. Now we have the main class that has the enclosing functionality is the trend setters by location. Okay, so we can have that. Even though it depends on data source, but the data source can be sent to it. Okay, so let's have at least a skeleton of that. So I'm just gonna say trend setters. On. Okay, now here I need to have a class that is a trend setters by location. Okay, now we still need other classes to be ready, so I can just say pass for now so that it doesn't give me an error, and then I'll come back to it later. So the other classes that I have the data source, the general data source. So that has class data source. And then the children data sources. So we have the Reddit. We're not going to implement the Reddit. We didn't talk about the Reddit API, so we're not going to implement it just for you to see the structure, how is it going to look like. So let's say this is Reddit source. And it is supposed to inherit from data source, right? So in order for it to inherit from data source, it needs what? Well, I see there's an error here. What does it say? We don't know a data source. So we have a class called data source in another file, right? But in order for us to refer to it here, we need to import it, right? So from data source. So this is the module name, the file name. We want to import the class. Okay, so now it would be known, right? Now we agreed that the data source, the parent class would have a function that would be overridden, right? So we would have the function that's called getPopular. Takes topic or takes location. What does it take? Just getPopular and takes a topic. Okay. All right. Now there is no meaningful implementation here for this function in the parent, so I'm just gonna say pass. I just want it to be a placeholder for the children to implement it. Now I need to go here. This would be a data source, so I need to define this function to make sure whenever there is a data source, this function is present to be executed. Okay, so so we're not gonna implement the details of the access to this API. We just, let's say we have found the sitters somehow. Let's say we have a list of data set. So trend setter of, and then this is the list that we found of trend setters. So let's say this is author 1. And its popularity was 1000. And 432. Okay, population 5,000. What's the problem? Why is it highlighting this class here, the TrendSetter? What is the problem again? Yes? Sorry? Yeah, we didn't import it. Yeah. So same thing. We defined it in another file. Since we defined it in another file, we need to import it. So we need to say from TrendSetter import. Okay. So let's say here we have a code to access the Reddit API. And then we found it, and then we just return this function. It returns the list of sitters that were found. Okay. Now we have another source that is the YouTube source, right? So we can have another class for it. So again, we have this our class YouTube source needs to inherit from data source. So again, we're gonna need to import both the parent source and the TrendSetter. All right. Now let's just have the skeleton, and then we're gonna add the implementation because we know how to implement this API. We're gonna add the implementation. Let's first start with the skeleton. So if we look at the class here. So we have get channel name, get popular videos, get statistics by video ID, find popular by topic, and create request. Okay, so let's see. We have get, so that's fine. Get channel name, it takes channel ID. We have create request. Supposed to take some things, and we're gonna look into it now. And there is get statistics by video ID. And get popular videos. Their topic. And we have to have the get popular, the one that inherits from the parent, right? So get popular. And topic. And then we can, okay, at least this one we know what happens in. So in this get popular, it calls the get popular videos. And the get popular videos is supposed to either return the trend setters or set like say self the trend setters and set it, and then we return. Okay, so we're gonna assume that it's a matter of this choice. Okay, so if we assume that eventually here we're gonna return it from here. Okay, so let's continue to setters. At some point, we're gonna need to create it and then populate it. Eventually return it. and then here we just return what comes from the get popular videos. Obviously, every function in a class must start with a parameter that is called what? Stuff. Okay, so that I can start referring to the object